They laughed when the girl in the face cap walked into the Haneul Circle. Nobody was laughing by the end of the night. The girl in clean white sneakers should never have been inside the Haneul Circle. At least that's what everyone in the room believed. Especially the men laughing at her. The first thing people noticed about her was what she wasn't. She wasn't elegant. Wasn't dressed to impress. And she definitely didn't look like someone who should be standing inside the Haneul Circle, the most exclusive private lounge in the city of Daejeon. She wore a black face cap, an oversized black shirt, loose cargo pants, and clean white sneakers. At a meeting where even the waiters looked expensive. "This meeting isn't open to the public," one man said, not even looking at her. She blinked once. "Then it's a good thing I was invited." The man chuckled. "Yeah, sure." She didn't argue. She just walked past him. That was the first mistake people made with her. They assumed silence meant weakness. It didn't. It meant she was deciding whether you were worth speaking to. Inside, the room buzzed with quiet power. CEOs. Investors. People who smiled too much and trusted too little. And at the center of it all, Kane Jeon. The man no one interrupted. The man people lowered their voices for without realizing it. He hadn't spoken yet and still, the room felt like it was waiting for his permission to breathe. She noticed him immediately. Not because he was powerful. Because he was the only person in the room who wasn't pretending to be something. She filed that away. Found a spot near the window. Good sightline. Nobody watching her watch everyone else. She wasn't there to impress anyone. She was there to observe. She'd been quietly brought in after irregularities appeared in the merger paperwork. She'd already spent days tracing the problem before arriving tonight. Very few people inside the circle even knew she was coming. His name was Director Song. Tailored suit. Loud watch. The kind of man who had never been corrected in a room that mattered. He walked toward her with a smile that had always worked before. "You lost?" "No." "Then you're in the wrong place." A few people laughed. "The safe kind." "I was invited," she said. That made him laugh louder. "By who?" "The janitor?" Someone choked on their drink. The laughter spread, even from people who didn't find it funny, because it was easier than silence. Across the room Kane Jeon didn't laugh. Didn't move. But his eyes shifted from Song to her. He was watching. Not the insult. The reaction. She glanced at Song's watch. "Too big for your wrist," she said calmly. The laughter stopped. "You keep adjusting it," she added. "That usually means it doesn't fit right." Then someone at the back failed to hide a laugh. Song's smile cracked. "You think you're funny?" "No," she said. "I think you're loud." The silence had weight. Across the room, Kane Jeon's lips curved. Just slightly. That was the moment he decided she was interesting. In Daejeon there was an unspoken rule. If Kane Jeon didn't react, neither should you. So when the room fell quiet everyone looked at him. Waiting. He stood. No announcement. No raised voice. Just movement. And somehow that was louder than anything. He walked toward them slowly. The crowd parted without being asked. Song straightened immediately. "Mr. Jeon, I." Kane Jeon didn't look at him. His eyes stayed on her. "You were invited," he said. Not a question. "Yes." "Show me." She reached into her pocket and held out a small black card. No logo. Just a time and a name, handwritten in ink. He looked at it once. Then he turned to Song. "You asked who invited her." A pause. "I did." The room didn't gasp. It went completely still, which was worse. Song laughed nervously. "A test, right?" "Good one." "I don't run tests," Kane Jeon said quietly. He stepped aside and gestured toward the center of the room. "You're exactly where you're supposed to be," he told her. Nobody in that room had ever seen Kane Jeon publicly correct director Song. She walked past him without fanfare, hands in her pockets. But nobody in that room understood yet why she was really there. Miriam was a contract specialist. Not a consultant. Not an advisor. A specialist, the kind companies called when something expensive was about to go wrong and nobody could see exactly where. She didn't own a business suit. Didn't need one. Her job was to read rooms, find cracks, and report what she saw before the whole thing split open. The sneakers weren't a statement. They were just comfortable shoes for a long night of work. That was the part that made Song's mockery sting, not for her, but for him. Because the most qualified person in the building had just been asked if she was the janitor. She let it go. Filed it away. More importantly, she filed away what happened next. Song stepped back after Kane Jeon's correction. Fixed his jacket. Smiled thinly. But his eyes moved immediately to a man at the third table. Gray tie. Still face. Eyes that tracked without his head moving. The man in the gray tie was already watching her. The moment the exchange ended, his attention sharpened. Then he looked away. She felt the hair on her arms rise slightly. Song wasn't embarrassed. Something about the exchange bothered her. She had walked into a room with a crack in it. She just hadn't found the edges yet. Kane Jeon pulled out the chair directly to his right. In this room that meant one thing, the most trusted person sits here. Everyone understood that. Including Song. He looked like the chair had personally offended him. She's wearing sneakers, Song said. To Kane Jeon. Like she wasn't there. Kane Jeon didn't look at Song. I don't care about her shoes, he said. I care about what she notices. She looked at the chair. It looks uncomfortable. Silence dropped over the room like a curtain. Kane Jeon's eyebrow lifted slightly. It costs more than most people's cars. She sat down anyway. Price doesn't make it soft. One person at the back made a sound that was absolutely not a laugh. She settled in. Hands flat on the table. And quietly, without making it obvious, she looked at Song's hand. His ring finger. There was a ring there. Gold. Heavy looking. The kind that gets passed down, not purchased. Except the color was slightly off. Too bright. Too even. A replica. She looked at the third table. Gray tie was watching her with the focused patience of someone who had been told to watch and report. At first she assumed he was internal security. It took her another 30 seconds to realize security officers usually tried not to be noticed. She looked away. She had what she needed. The crack in the room had a name. She just needed 4 more minutes to prove it. Song cleared his throat and tried again. Since she's your guest, perhaps she can contribute. The Hansing merger. What does she think? He said it the way adults speak to children they want to fail in public. She didn't rush. Walk me through it, she said. Song blinked. Then launched into a long speech. Numbers. Projections. Profits. Loud and rehearsed and completely confident. She didn't look at the papers once. She watched his hands. The ring caught the light every time he gestured. Bright. Perfect. Fake. When Song finished, Kane Jeon turned to her. Well? He's lying, she said. The room cracked open. Song's face went red. On what basis? Your ring, she said calmly. That ring identifies you as one of Kane Jeon's lieutenants. Everyone at this table knows that. It's not jewelry, it's trust. But yours is a replica. The real one has a small imperfection on the left band, a casting mark. Yours doesn't. Total silence. The real ring is gone, she said. People don't replace a symbol like that unless they're desperate. Which means the problem started long before anyone noticed. It started the moment you needed fast cash and couldn't ask anyone in this room for it. Song's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Kane Jeon's voice was very quiet. Where's the real ring, Song? Nobody laughed after that. Not even Song. He looked at the table. That was answer enough. The same people who had laughed at her earlier suddenly couldn't meet her eyes. But across the room, the man in the gray tie was already standing up. She noticed him move before anyone else did. "Excuse me," she said and stood up before Kane Jeon could speak. She crossed the room at a normal pace. Not rushing. Like she was heading to the bathroom. In the hallway she stopped at the corner. Gray tie had his phone to his ear. His back was to her. His voice was low but the hallway was quiet and she had always had good ears. One sentence. She sees too much. Move the timeline up. He hung up. Turned. Saw her standing there. Neither of them moved for exactly 2 seconds. Then she turned and walked back inside like she'd heard nothing. She sat down. Put her phone face down on the table. Looked at Kane Jeon directly. Song's ring went to a pawn shop on Chile Street, she said. I saw him coming out. I didn't know who he was then. She kept her voice steady. The merger money was already gone. He's been unraveling for over a week. Kane Jeon looked at Song. Song didn't even try to argue. But Song isn't your real problem tonight, she said. The table went very still. The man in the gray tie just made a phone call. One sentence, she sees too much, move the timeline up. She looked at Kane Jeon directly. Someone placed him here. And whatever they were planning, you just lost the element of surprise. The silence that followed was the heaviest thing in the room. Kane Jeon looked at her for a long moment. Then he turned to his head of security and said 2 words. Lock down. Whatever was supposed to happen that night, it wasn't going to happen on anyone else's schedule. Phones were confiscated within minutes. Security sealed every exit inside the Haneul Circle. Even the music had stopped. By midnight 2 accountants and an assistant manager had quietly disappeared from the guest list entirely. They moved to a smaller room with Kane Jeon's remaining inner circle. Song was gone. Gray tie was being held quietly in a back office, phone confiscated, very unhappy about it. By morning he'd already given them 3 names. She sat at the end of a small table while Kane Jeon's team worked through what she'd seen and heard. Questions. Confirmations. A name she didn't recognize that made 2 men in the room exchange a look she didn't like. When it was done, Kane Jeon dismissed everyone except her. He poured water. Slid a glass toward her. You came here as a contract specialist, he said. Yes. To observe. Report. Leave. Yes. That's not what happened. No, she agreed. It isn't. He looked at her the way she looked at things, carefully. Like he was reading something underneath the surface. You're not afraid, he said. Fear doesn't give me information, she said. Watching does. You could have stayed at the table, he said. You didn't have to follow him. If I'd stayed at the table you'd have lost your window. She shrugged. It was practical. It was also dangerous. She met his eyes. So was mocking me in front of a room full of people. Didn't stop Song. He was quiet for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, he stood up. Walked to the window. Looked out at the city below. This wasn't Song's operation, he said quietly. Chairman Wu. The man in the gray tie works for him. He's been running a separate operation inside my circle for over a year. Song was his. 3 others I trusted were his. She absorbed that. He knows about me now, she said. Yes. That's why you're telling me. Not because you trust me with the information. She watched his profile against the window. Because I'm already a target and I deserve to know. He turned. Both, he said simply. That one word landed differently than anything else he'd said all night. She stood up. I'll be fine, she said. I know you will, he said. That's not why I told you. She stopped. Looked at him. He looked back. Something honest passed between them, no title, no position, no room full of people deciding what it meant. Just two people standing in a small, locked room at the end of a very long night. You know where I work, she said finally. Yes. Then you know how to contact me. She walked out. On the street below, a single black card sat on the pavement. 2 words in red ink. Stop looking. She picked it up. Put it in her pocket. Kept walking. They already knew she wouldn't stop. That wasn't the point of the card. The point was to see if she'd be scared. She wasn't. But she was something else now, something she hadn't been when she walked into the Haneul Circle. She was involved. And involvement, for a woman who had spent her whole career being underestimated, was the most dangerous thing of all. They spoke 3 more times after that, always briefly, always about work, and never entirely about work. Not long after, he came to find her. Not a card this time. He appeared at the small coffee shop near her office building. Sitting in the corner. 2 men outside the door, not obvious, but there. She clocked them before she sat down. He slid a folded paper across the table. She opened it. 1 name. 1 address. A list of the 3 people inside his circle who had been feeding Wu information for 14 months. It's done? She asked. It will be by morning. She nodded. Folded the paper. Slid it back. Keep it, he said. So you know it's real. She looked at him. He was wearing a suit again, sharp, expensive, correct. But his shoes were different tonight. Clean white sneakers. She looked at them for exactly 1 second. He said nothing about them. Neither did she. But she understood. You didn't have to come personally, she said. Wu knows your name, he said. His operation is finished but he isn't gone yet. Until he is, you shouldn't be alone at night. I'm always alone at night. I know, he said. That's why I came. She looked at him for a long moment. This man who controlled rooms without raising his voice. Who had destroyed a 14-month operation after one sentence she'd overheard in a hallway changed the entire night. Who was now sitting in a coffee shop in clean white sneakers she couldn't help noticing. You're not what I expected, she said. You gave that impression the first night. I know, she said. I'm saying it again because it's still true. The coffee shop moved around them. Ordinary and warm and completely indifferent to who they were. What happens now? She asked. Wu gets handled, he said. The circle gets clean. He looked at her steadily. And I'd like to keep working with you. Officially. On my terms and yours. I don't wear suits. I noticed. I won't tell you what you want to hear. I know. And if I see something wrong in your room, I'll say it. Directly. In front of whoever is there. That's why I'm asking. She looked down at her coffee. Then at his sneakers. Then at him. All right, she said. The way she agreed to everything that made sense. He nodded once. They sat there a little longer than a business conversation required. Neither of them mentioned it. 3 weeks later Chairman Wu quietly disappeared from every room in Beijing. No announcement. No public drama. 2 days earlier, Wu had attempted to move money through offshore accounts tied to the merger. Every account had already been frozen. Just a man who found every door closed, without anyone explaining why. The 3 people inside Kane Jeon's circle who had been feeding information were gone by the end of the week. No confrontation. No scene. They simply stopped being invited. That was how Kane Jeon worked. Not loud. Not messy. Just final. She heard about it the way she heard about most things, by noticing what changed. By reading the small shifts in rooms she passed through. By watching who relaxed and who didn't. She noticed something else too. The rooms Kane Jeon ran now felt different. Cleaner. Like windows that had been opened after a long winter. People spoke to say things rather than to fill space. Decisions got made instead of deferred. The performances stopped because the performer was gone and nobody missed him. She had done that. Not loudly. Not by announcing herself. Just by seeing the truth and saying it out loud. One evening after a meeting, Kane Jeon fell into step beside her in the hallway. "The room is different," he said. "Yes. You did that. You let me," she said. "That's not the same as doing it for you." He was quiet for a moment. "No," he said. "It isn't." They walked to the end of the hallway. Outside, the city moved through its evening, ordinary, continuous, indifferent. "Same time Thursday," he said. She pulled her jacket on. "I'll be there," she said. And she walked out into the city. Same black shirt. Same cargo pants. Same clean white sneakers. Nothing about her had changed. Except that somewhere between then and now, people had finally stopped underestimating her. Not because the room had changed. Because she had finally let it see her.